जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी। जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी। गोपी जान वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी। गोपी जान वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी। यशोदनन्दना व्रजजनरञ्जना। यशोदनन्दना व्रजजनरञ्जना। यामुनतीरावनचारी। यामुनतीरावनचारी। जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी। गोपी जान वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी। यशोदनन्दना व्रजजनरञ्जना। यामुनतीरावनचारी। जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी। जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी। जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्रजाकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शतशिशिमाद His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON BBT Samstapaka Acharya His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जायमुदीरये। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। This morning we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. We are commencing a new chapter, chapter 27, titled Understanding Material Nature. Text 1. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Prakritisto Pi Purusho Na Jyate Prakriter Gunai Avikarad Akritritvan Nirgunatvaj Jalarkavat. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Prakritistopi Purusho Najyate Prakriter Gunai Avikarad Akritritvan Nirgunatva Jalakavat. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Prakritistopi Purusho Najyate Prakriter Gunai Avikarad Akritritvan Nirgunatva Jalakavat. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Prakritistopi Purusho Najyate Prakriter Gunai Avikarad Akritritvan Nirgunatva Jalarkavat. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Prakritistopi Purusho Najyate Prakriter Gunai Avikarad Akritritvan Nirgunatva Jalarkavat. Ladies, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. The personality of Godhead said, Prakriti Staha, residing in the material body, Api, although, Purushaha, the living entity, Na, not, Ajyate, is affected, Prakrite, of material nature, Gunai, by the modes, Avikarat, from being without change, Akritritvat, by freedom from proprietorship, Nirgunatvat, from being unaffected by the qualities of material nature, Jala, on water, Akravat, like the sun. Akratila, so Akra means sun. Akravat, so like the sun. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Translation. The personality of Godhead, Kapila, continued. When the living entity is thus unaffected by the modes of material nature, because he is unchanging and does not claim proprietorship, he remains apart from the reactions of the modes, although abiding in a material body, just as the sun remains aloof from its reflection on water. In the previous chapter, purport. In the previous chapter, Lord Kapiladeva has concluded that simply by beginning the discharge of devotional service, one can attain detachment and transcendental knowledge for understanding the signs of God. Here the same principle is confirmed. A person who is detached from the modes of material nature remains just like the sun reflected on water. When the sun is reflected on water, the movement of the water or the coolness or unsteadiness of the water cannot affect the sun. Similarly, Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha, Bhagavatam 127. Srila Prabhupada quoted this in the previous text also, the same reference. When one engages fully in the activities of devotional service, Bhakti Yoga, he becomes just like the sun reflected on water. Although a devotee appears to be in the material world, actually he is in the transcendental world. As the reflection of the sun appears to be on the water, but is many millions of miles away from the water, so one engaged in the Bhakti Yoga process is nirguna, or unaffected by the qualities of material nature. Avikara means without change. It is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that each and every living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and thus his eternal position is to cooperate, to dovetail his energy with the Supreme Lord. That is his unchanging position. As soon as he employs his energy and activities for sense gratification, this change of position is called vikara. Similarly, even in this material body, when he practices devotional service under the direction of the spiritual master, he comes to the position which is without change, because that is his natural duty. As stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam, liberation means reinstatement in one's original position. The original position is one of rendering service to the Lord, bhakti yogena bhaktiya. When one becomes detached from material attraction and engages fully in devotional service, that is changelessness. Akritvat means not doing anything for sense gratification. When one does something at his own risk, there is a sense of proprietorship and therefore a reaction. But when one does everything for Krishna, there is no proprietorship over the activities. By changelessness and by not claiming the proprietorship of activities, one can immediately situate himself in the transcendental position in which one is not touched by the modes of material nature, just as the reflection of the sun is unaffected by the water. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of Canto 3, Chapter 27 in the matter of understanding material nature, Text 1. Om Ajnanaatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tamsajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Jaya Pataka Swaminiti Namine Nama Acharya Padaya Nitai Kripa Pradaine Gaura Katha Damadaya Nagaragrama Tarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Gopi Paranadanadase Iti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindubhya Evacha Patithanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yatkripatamaham Bande Shri Guru Dinatarinam Yatkripatamaham Bande Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Katanchana Smrite Yasmin Dushkaram Sukaram Bhavet Vismrite Viparitam Syat Shri Chaitanyam Namamitam. So, in the previous verse and in this verse, Srila Prabhupada gives us a clear direction, quoting from Srimad Bhagavatam, Chapter 1, Canto 1, Chapter 2, Text 7, Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha. When one engages fully in the activities of devotional service, Bhakti Yoga, he becomes just like the sun reflected in the water. So, in the previous text also, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada quotes the same verse. There he says, when Vasudeva, Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha, when Vasudeva, the all-pervading Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is served in completely pure devotion, detachment from the material world immediately begins. So, it is not, it begins at a later instant in time, it begins immediately. Now, what does it mean to say completely pure devotion? What does completely pure devotion mean? So, the program of Krishna consciousness, the everyday of program of Krishna consciousness as devised by Srila Prabhupada for the members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness is the definition of completely pure devotion. Srila Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu explains that there are 5 topmost elements of devotional service. And Srila Prabhupada has ensured that we are absorbed in these 5 topmost elements of devotional service every day. So we chant, what are those 5 topmost elements? We take shelter of Krishna in the form of his holy names. We take shelter of Krishna in the form of the book Bhagavata, and also we take shelter of the devotees, the devotee Bhagavata, by hearing from the devotee Bhagavata and also by serving the devotee Bhagavata. So 3 elements are: first chanting the holy names, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, then serving the devotees. We serve the devotees both by hearing from them submissively and by rendering some service to them. Hearing is also service. We also render other service beside hearing. So then we render service to the deities. We assemble first thing in the morning. We assemble in front of the deities with Shraddhaya, with faith. This is God. This is Radha Krishna, Radha Madhava Ashtasaki, the Panchatattva. They are personally standing here, and we are going to them for what? To report ourselves. This is the definition of darshan. Darshan essentially means that we go to report to our boss. This is the meaning of darshan. Of course, in the process we also have the vision of the Lord. The purpose of going is not to have vision of the Lord. The purpose of going is to report ourselves to the Lord primarily. But we also get vision of the Lord. And finally, Mathura Vas. Mathura Vas means residing in a holy place like Mathura, Sri Dham Mayapur. And Srila Prabhupada said that he has created embassies of Mathura and Vrindavan. Sorry, embassies of Mathura, Vrindavan and Mayapur around the world in his temples. And he said that we can also make our homes into temples. When Dayananda and Nandarani, when Srila Prabhupada sent them to Tehran, the famous, everybody knows about Tehran these days. So when Srila Prabhupada sent them there, and they were working, they took up some work as far as I remember. But Srila Prabhupada said, make your house into a temple, which means that the house is not a place, just a private residence. Okay, it's good that you have a place to stay and you can take rest in that place, but that is not meant to be just a private residence. Invite people home. Like people visit places of pilgrimage, right? So, if you worship the deity and deity does not necessarily mean physical murtis, but it could also mean pictures, because the deities can manifest themselves in picture form also. So, if one worships the deities and invites people, so people are visiting a place of pilgrimage. So, these are the 5 topmost elements of devotional service which Srila Prabhupada has incorporated into our daily lives. Then, however, if we were to be very highly qualified, then one does not need to do any other activity. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur once placed an advertisement, and the advertisement said that we are looking for devotees who could come to the Gaudiya Mutt. And what is their work? Simply chanting the holy names. They will be provided prasadam. Throughout the day, they should simply chant the holy names. Several people applied, but they couldn't continue that. But there was someone who continued, Akinchana Krishnadas Babaji, who was a well-wisher of ISKCON and Srila Prabhupada, who also came to meet Srila Prabhupada in Vrindavan, ISKCON of Vrindavan, during his final days. And Akinchana Krishnadas Babaji has a samadhi in Nandagaon at the Bhajan Kutir of Sanatan Goswami. So, if someone is extraordinarily qualified like that, if someone can do that, one does not need to do anything else. That alone is sufficient. But most of us, especially me, I mean, I say us, I always refer to in general. It doesn't mean everybody in this room. So that's generally the way of in didactic, means in teaching or in explaining something. That's the general method. So we have our psycho-physical conditions. If our mind is disturbed, then it may not be very easy to practice. 24 hours a day I should just chant. I'll have prasadam and just go to sleep and then chant again. 24 hours, I mean, apart from all the waking hours, the mind may be very restless. No, I need to do some activity. I've got this nature, I've got that nature. I need to do some activity. So, this program of Krishna consciousness is devised in such a manner that, all right, if one has a psychophysical nature, one can engage that psychophysical nature in the service of the Lord. That is the beginning of the process of Bhakti Yoga. Beginning of the process of Krishna consciousness. If we notice the Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada refers to Karma Yoga as action in Krishna consciousness. Bhakti Yoga is also Krishna consciousness. So sometimes the mundane scholars criticize Srila Prabhupada by saying that your founder Acharya, whatever Krishna has said, he is overriding that by calling everything Bhakti Yoga or Krishna consciousness. But actually Srila Prabhupada has given us very precise understanding of things. When one engages one's psychophysical nature in the service of the Lord, it is called Krishna consciousness. When one advances in Krishna consciousness, then one comes to the stage which is mentioned in this particular verse and elsewhere throughout the Bhagavatam and the Bhakti Shastras. When one is not affected by the modes, and then one is willing to do whatever it takes to serve the Lord, just like His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, our founder Acharya. He came from a very aristocratic family. He was a businessman. Yet for the purposes of executing the mission of his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, so to execute his mission, he was willing to go, even before that, he was willing to live in poverty-stricken condition, very frugal conditions where he could get only one meal a day, traveling to Delhi in intense summer heat to publish his Bhagavatam and Back to God at magazines, traveling in a cargo ship, then living in a Bowery in New York. If you read Miracle on 2nd Avenue by Mukunda Goswami, he recollects the days when he first went to meet Srila Prabhupada there. And he writes that in the passageway and outside the passageway while going to Srila Prabhupada's apartment, this is before he moved to 26 2nd Avenue. So before he moved there, the entrance, the passageway would reek of the smell of vomit and urine. And this is His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada living in those conditions, completely unaffected, just with one purpose, to execute the instructions of his spiritual master. This is the platform of Bhakti Yoga. This is the highest platform of Krishna consciousness. The beginning platform is Karma Yoga. Gradually, that is Krishna consciousness as Prabhupada defines in the Bhagavad Gita. Then one comes to the platform of actual Bhakti Yoga. So technically, Karma Yoga is nothing but Bhakti Yoga in practice. And when one comes to the level of perfection, one is unaffected, then one can say that one is completely situated in Bhakti Yoga, fully situated in Bhakti Yoga. Otherwise, one is practicing Bhakti Yoga. One has perfected the practice of Bhakti Yoga. When one comes to the stage of doing whatever it takes to render service to the Lord. Similarly, later on, when followers came to His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, what did he do? He cooked for them personally. He served them, and in the initial days, they wouldn't clean up after eating, and Srila Prabhupada would personally do it himself. He would personally do it. So whatever it takes, he would do. So this is the platform of perfected Bhakti Yoga, where one is completely unaffected by the modes. But generally, we are affected by the kind of particular modes that we were born into or according to our psychophysical nature. However, the Acharyas, being merciful, in fact, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he asked Ramananda Roy, what is the highest perfection of life? Although Ramananda Roy gave different solutions, only when he quoted Sthane Sita Shrutigatan Tanuvan Manovir, Sthane Stitha, that one can be in one's own position. And what should one do in that position? Sanmukaritan Bhavadiya Varta. One has to just hear a perfect, pure devotee. Then what happens? Slowly, Anukramyashati, which means slowly, one progresses to the stage where Ajita, the Lord who is unconquerable, becomes conquered. So this is Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the greatest, the complete representation of the full manifestation of God, the highest manifestation of God. It's not that gods are all equal, all the incarnations of the Lord are equal, all the expansions are equal, but the highest manifestation is Krishna and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is the verdict of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that one does not need to change one's position abruptly, but one has to hear from the saintly persons, the Sanmukaritan Bhavadiya Varta. Then the incomparable Lord becomes eventually conquered. And so that's about the psychophysical nature. So when one speaks about the threefold miseries, first is the adhyatmic, so miseries caused by the mind. So we can try to eliminate it as much as possible by being engaged in one's psychophysical nature. Similarly, there are miseries caused by the body. To a certain extent it can be controlled with medicine, but may not be fully. But if we notice the examples of great devotees, take for example Srila Prabhupada himself, the kind of tribulations that he underwent, both in India, while in the heat of summer heat of Delhi, he was gored by a cow while trying to go to the press to print his books. He once had a sunstroke. Similarly, while going on the Jaladuta, he had heart attacks. Later on, in New York, he had a stroke. And in one letter, Srila Prabhupada says, there is always some disturbance that the body gives. He says, right now I got some constant buzzing in my head. But I simply think that I have to execute the instructions of my Guru Maharaj. So we can see from the example of Srila Prabhupada and great devotees that even if there is cause for disturbance or due to bodily distress, still one can be situated in a platform where one is unaffected. One can be. Srila Prabhupada is a classic example of that. And here in the Bhagavatam, if we take the previous examples, we take the Bhagavatam, Parikshit Maharaj is faced with the most scary situation. Generally, most of us are scared of snakes. It's considered a very envious creature, and generally people are afraid of snakes. What to speak of a flying snake? At least snake, that okay, if I keep away from a snake, I'm safe. But if a snake can fly, that's very unsettling, And not only a snake can fly, but you're going to be killed by a flying snake. It's inconceivable, the kind of fear that can cause. But if we look at the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the text and the purports very clearly explain he was completely free from all kinds of fear. He just did not fear. Okay, let the snake bird come. In fact, he says that also. Let the snake bird come. He is totally callous to that dangerous material situation. And even in recent examples, I get rattled when I get physically sick. So once I asked my spiritual master, His Holiness Jayapataka Maharaj, that I have seen you in the most difficult, excruciating circumstances, and yet I have seen you very jovial. Forget about not being affected. Not being affected is one thing, but being jovial in such circumstances is extraordinary. So then I asked him, how do you do this? It beats my mind. It's just inconceivable. There is no situation, despite your extreme bodily distress or complications, that you are even in the middle of an ICU, you are jovial. Wherever you are, you are jovial. How is that possible? Then he just looked at me and he said, I simply think of the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. So therein lies the secret of Bhakti Yoga, that state of constant absorption at the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. That is what we desire to achieve, that state of constant absorption. And in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, in the first canto, Srila Prabhupada explains that the Srimad Bhagavatam is Krishna himself. And Srila Prabhupada explains that one can perceive Krishna in every page of the Bhagavatam. How can one Krishna perceive in every, how can we perceive Krishna in every page of the Bhagavatam? Just by attentive hearing. Just by attentive hearing. Then Srila Prabhupada explains, attentive hearing is possible only when one is pure in mind. And then he says, one can be pure in mind only when one is pure in one's habits. And one can be pure in one's habits only if one follows the 4 regulative principles. So if you look at the sequence, rapt attention comes from a pure mind. And a pure mind comes from following the 4 regulative principles. What, of course, pure mind, Prabhupada in that context, Prabhupada speaks that, but when it says pure mind, it is a given that we are meant to chant the Hare Krishna mantra with every living breath, 24 hours. So that's a given. So apart from that aspect of purification, one also has to restrain the activities of the body in regard to the 4 regulative principles. So sometimes the non-devotees, the materialists, they criticize the devotees or say, oh, these people are just so many rules and regulations, so many moral principles. What is the need of all these moral principles? But we see this is not just a moral principle. It is a scientific principle. It is a principle of perception. Perception. Like science, they emphasize a lot on perception, right? Perception. Everything starts with observation, perception. So, Bhagavatam explains that if you are not free from the 4 sins, then your perception cannot be perfect. So, it is a scientific principle. Perception is a scientific principle. So, it is not just a moral principle. It is a scientific principle of perception. So, if one can begin to practice this, that when I practice Bhakti Yoga every day, let me be attentive, let me be absorbed, let me be attentive. There is no other way. In fact, it's called a yoga, right? Every yoga has got a stringent discipline. Now, Hatha Yoga, we know, Arjuna says it's very difficult. More difficult than to control the raging wind, right? But if you look at any system of yoga, it is a rigorous discipline. Bhakti Yoga is also a system of rigorous discipline. And what is our discipline? Our discipline is, Prabhupada said, when you are chanting Hare Krishna, don't try to control the mind, don't try to do all these kinds of things. That is not our stringent process. Our stringent process is, whenever the mind strays from the chanting of the Hare Krishna, bring it back to hearing. Just hear. This is the sum and substance of all japa retreat, japa. Just try to hear. That's it. One does not have to perform any other kind of activity. One has to simply try to hear. Right? So this is our process. One simply has to try to be attentive in one's process of Bhakti Yoga. I was just reminded last week when I saw, or the week before that, when I saw His Grace Radhesham Prabhu, our Radhesham Prabhu, President of ISKCON Pune. Exactly 20 years ago, around this time, 2006, it was the Rath Yatra time, and this is the time that he brings his students to Mayapur. And during that time, he brought them in such a manner that one day before the Rath Yatra, they would finish the camp and they would go to the Rath Yatra in Jagannath Puri. That particular year, 2006, Radhanath Swami was having a whole big yatra. So everybody was going from here to Jagannath Puri. So Radhesham Prabhu invited me, why don't you just join? I said, why not? If you're inviting, why not? But during that, I mean, we just had 10-15 minutes chat. But what happened at that time was that I couldn't exit the room because there was heavy thunderstorm and rain. I mean, thunderstorms, I mean, those who have lived in Mayapur know, the thunders can crack the heart. It's like, I mean, it's very loud thunder and lightning and things like that, So this started as I was conversing with Radhesham Prabhu, and after I finished the conversation, that whole thing lasted for another half an hour. And we finished our conversation, and what would we do then? Pick up our beads and chant. But I was very struck by what I saw. During the next half an hour, amidst all this thunder, amidst all this lightning and all this heavy rain and disturbance, Radhesham Prabhu was just focused on chanting the holy name with closed eyes. Did not wince even once, despite all the thunder and all that, Then I got inspired. This is how we practice Bhakti Yoga. That when we chant the holy names, when we practice Krishna consciousness, we are fully attentive to that process. And this is our method. This is our method. So sometimes, because the disturbances of the mind can be variegated, right? So we may think, I have this particular kind of disturbance. Do I have some particular kind of solution for this? I have another kind of disturbance. Do I have another kind of solution for that? So depending on the disturbances that our mind undergoes, then we think, is there some particular solution? But that process itself is a distraction. Because the solution to all disturbances is to attentively practice Bhakti Yoga. Sometimes there are some solutions which are given, which again come within the ambit of what we are doing actually. Like for example, in the 15th chapter of the 7th canto, there are some prescriptions. If one is facing shoka, lamentation, what should one do? Read the scripture. We are anyway reading Bhagavatam, so maybe we can increase the quantity of reading Bhagavatam. Then what happens if one is proud? So the prescription is, go and serve a great devotee. So that obviously when you see somebody superior than yourself, then the feeling of pride would be diminished. So there are, solutions like that, which means that if there are some specific things, there are some solutions, but even those solutions come within the main ambit, within the 5 principles what Rupa Goswami has given. So one should be confident of this fact, that one need not do anything besides the process of pure devotional service that Prabhupada has given us. Even within that, it is not necessary to try to analyze and come up with some solutions of our own. No. We just have to repetitively do the same thing over and over and over again with faith. With faith. That is very important. That Srila Prabhupada says advancement in Krishna consciousness depends on the attitude of the follower, which means that we should be convinced that the process of devotional service that we have, especially the top 5 elements, we should focus on those top 5 elements. And within those top 5 elements, the solution to all problems is there. One does not have to attempt something else, like the gopis, right? They met Krishna in Kurukshetra. It's okay, you're Krishna, but you're not Krishna in Vrindavan. We want that Krishna in Vrindavan. So like that, the followers of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada are interested in following exactly what he has given us. We are interested in following Rupa Goswami. We want Krishna, who is given to us by Rupa Goswami and his followers. For us, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. That is sufficient. In fact, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, there has never been and there will never be such followers as the followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We should be convinced of that fact. And we should simply take shelter of the, let me call it, the standard process. The standard process is also the most sublime process. We should have the faith. Prabhupada repeatedly tells us that this is the most sublime process. So if we just do that, that's enough. I got a question yesterday, and I replied that I'll answer that in today's class. Prabhuji, can you please recommend an article or book that can help me see myself different from my mind that experiences pain or pleasure? So our process is not that we read an article or book that helps us to see ourselves different from the mind that experiences pain or pleasure. That is not the purpose of reading any article. That is not even our goal. That happens as a byproduct, as is mentioned here. Vairagya, detachment, happens as a byproduct of attentive devotional service. And if we are not devoting devotional service properly, that vairagya will not come. Srila Prabhupada gives the example of eating. He says that if you eat, you feel nourished, you feel happy, and your hunger will go away. But if there are disturbances in the stomach, then something else will happen. So if we are practicing Krishna consciousness right, so stomach is considered to be Krishna. So if we rightly serve Krishna, then we experience this naturally, that vairagya will come. We don't have to try for it extraneously. But at the same time, Srila Prabhupada explains that this is the test. When we practice bhakti yoga, that detachment has to come. As Prabhupada says here, that detachment from the material world immediately begins. May not be that we will be detached fully. If we are like Katvanga Muni, yes. But otherwise, it may not be that immediately it may get detached. But, everything will get detached, but the detachment begins. So, all that we have to do, we don't have to try to see ourselves different from our mind that experiences pain, pleasure, nothing. We don't have time for all these things. We have time only for attentive bhakti yoga, and automatically these things will happen. Okay, I'll stop there if there are any reflections, comments, questions. He raised his hand first, so okay, all right.
I've recently been reading in the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, Prabhupada in Vrindavan, getting close to the final days, and he had GBCs and sannyasis come to meet with him, and there was he said, I'm not at all afraid, because I'm with Krishna here. After I leave my body, I'll be with Krishna. I'll always be with Krishna. Such a sweet, it's just amazing, how sweet he was during this whole period in the dying process. And, one thing also, this was back in, I think it was 2011. I was teaching Bhakti Shastri in Delhi. In east of Kailash. We had 140 students, and your Guru Maharaj came, and this was like about a year, maybe it was a couple years after your Guru Maharaj had the stroke in Juhu. I was actually there when that took place too, and Mahavraha said, I've never seen my Guru Maharaj despondent at all, despite all of the health challenges.
Yes.
This
Yes, yes.
Vyashyatmika Buddhi. He's got Srila Prabhupada right in the core of his heart, the instructions. And he just, no matter what, he keeps going. It's incredible. And that's the source of empowerment because of that focus. And, so it's just so much Shakti comes from that.
Thank you for sharing that reflection. Krishna.
Pranam Prabhu. Pranam. Prabhu, you had mentioned about the rapt attention to be given.
Bhagavatam.
Bhagavatam. You had said that unless one has a pure mind, he cannot give rapt attention. Unless one follows a regulatory principle.
Yeah. It's linked. It's all linked.
Yeah, interconnected. In Bhagavatam, purport, Canto 1, Chapter 344, Prabhupada says, no one can give rapt attention who's not pure in mind. No one can be pure in mind who's not pure in action.
Yeah.
No one can be pure in action who's not pure in eating, sleeping, fearing and mating.
Correct.
So is this both the same, Prabhu, the regulative principles you said?
Yeah, regulative principles are connected to eating, fearing, that only, eating, sleeping, fearing and mating, that all the regulative principles are connected to that only, right? Yeah, that's the same thing. Eating, sleeping, fearing, mating, our regulative principles are connected to that. From Bhagavatam. What is the text number?
First canto, chapter 344.
1344.
Purport.
44.
44. Purport. 1344.
Yes.
Hare Krishna, thank you Prabhuji. It reminds me of a beautiful verse I heard in Srila Prabhupada's lecture from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita that Shraddha Shabde Vishwasa Kahe Sudrida Nishchay Krishna Bhakti Kaile Sarva Karma Kritahaya.
Thank you. Just that, basically that verse says that if you perform Krishna Bhakti, everything is done, finished. So Srila Prabhupada initially attempted that no need of Varnashram and all these things. I won't get into that topic of Varnashram now, but I'm just mentioning this, that Prabhupada attempted that, and later on he says that devotees means those who don't fall down. So then he stopped sanctioning, previously he would bless, arrange marriages rather. So he said, okay, they can do it at their own risk. Then he said Varnashrama is needed because they're falling down, so because unless devotees are able to do only that without consideration of their psychophysical nature, then there is a risk of falling down. So that's why later on he started speaking about this thing, just to protect devotees from falling down. Prabhupada attempted originally to just skip it. He says that also very clearly. Like for example, it is not that, take for example Dhruva. Okay, Dhruva, he practiced devotional service with the material desire. He didn't practice it with some. But it is possible for somebody to just do Kevala Bhakti, means only do devotional service. I'm not talking Shuddha Bhakti, Kevala Bhakti, which Kevala Bhakti means only devotional service. That's what Dhruva Maharaj did, even though he was not purified. So it is possible. It's not that what Prabhupada attempted was impossible. He attempted something which is possible, that one can be engaged only in the activities of devotional service, even if one has material desires, like for example Dhruva Maharaj, Kevala Bhakti. But he saw that the vast majority of devotees are not able to do it. So then he began to speak about Varnashram, so that they don't fall down. Because Prabhupada's definition of devotee means one who does not fall down. That's very, very important. Accidental fall down is a different thing, but generally devotees don't fall down. So why is it happening? Why are our sannyasis falling? Therefore Varnashrama is needed, Prabhupada said. Yeah. Varnashrama is Daivi Varnashrama, not the conservative classic Varnashrama. Okay, 8:59. Thank you all very much. Vanchikalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhu bevacha paridanam pavanebhyo vaishnebhyo namo namah. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhaktam ki jai.